From Trimble Construction, you're listening to the Connected Construction Show, where we connect you to the contractors, owners, designers, engineers, and construction professionals who are finding better ways to work. And now, here's your host, Matt Sprague.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Connected Construction Show. I am your host, Matt Sprague. Excited once again for another fantastic show. Guest this week over here to my right, your left, is Nguyen from Hensel Phelps. Ty, good to see you.
Matt, thank you for having me. So again, Nguyen with Hensel Phelps. Just a brief intro on myself. Been with Hensel Phelps now for about 16 years, and it's been a blink of an eye. I started in architecture in the Midwest in the late 80s and kind of worked my way through a few different industries, and not at the most direct path, but I think looking back, it was, I think those industries helping me get to where I am today and giving me that perspective, right? So the last 10 years, I've been the director of virtual design and construction for Hensel Phelps, and transitioning into a new role with a new company within Hensel Phelps called Diverge. We're a CVC within Hensel Phelps, and I'm excited to get that one off the ground.
It's awesome. We're definitely going to explore that in terms of the corporate venture capital Diverge within Hensel Phelps. But first, prior to the show, we were chatting in terms of hey, what do you want to talk about? What's interesting? In your comment immediately, without hesitation, was making sense of technology in the construction space. So dive into that one a little bit.
Absolutely. I think it resonates with Hensel Phelps, with many of our competitors, right? Today within the industry, we are a very fragmented industry that's known, and sometimes the tools reflect the industry. But if you realize today, with every job that we start, I'm balancing between 30 to 35 point solutions that we're having to leverage and teach our people, on a regular cadence, right? And that's just not sustainable. It's really, and I don't even know what the answer is, right? Is it APIs, or is it really, thinning out by leveraging on partners like Trimble, right, to kind of help with all the solution and needs that we have today.
Yeah. So that 30 to 35 point solutions per project, from project to project, how much do those vary? Is there I can't imagine, it's not 100% variation, but does it vary?
It does vary, and it really, what drives that is really, regions drive that, environment, contracts, owners, and then within that, I think as a GC, we are usually taking the lead of our owners and designers, from our owners and designers, and within that, we are expected to deliver a certain, format or a type of file, and within those deliveries, that our trades have to get behind us and do the same, right? So it's even harder for our trade partners because they're working with multiple GCs, right, on top of owners being specific. So for us, we try to keep standardization in terms of our core processes and our solutions, but then all those other ancillary products that we need, and for instance, 360 capture today, there's probably 10 to 15 solutions in the industry, right? Yep. And within that, some of our owners are very specific to some, others are to others. And so, on our jobs, it's very difficult because we have to adhere to deliverables set forth, and then within that, teach our people. But then, I think the hardship, and I think what you're driving towards, Matt, is on that next job, where you're teaching them a new solution. And so we try to avoid that, but in many ways, that's unavoidable.
Yeah. Well, even if it was consistent, you probably don't have the same people on the next job. Yeah. So you're still having to train them on those things until they've done it enough times.
That's right.
But even if they've done it enough times, the nature of software is that it changes.
It does.
And all of a sudden, so there's retraining that has to
Absolutely.
Occur.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So talk to me about some of those point solutions. I'm curious. I didn't think when you said that number, it surprised me. So obviously you said you have your core solutions.
That's
but
right.
What are the ancillary ones that are?
Yeah, and I referenced one. I think 360 capture, whether it's video walks or static, right?
Yeah.
Within that, you've also got how do you, for instance, if you fly an aerial or fly drones, you're using a solution to consume that data, allowing your people to do analytics, right? So that's one piece of it there. That 360 capture, that's another software that you're pulling in data. And then, within that, laser scans, I mean, what are you using as a point solution for that? And
Yeah.
so again, all these different things, we're having to use different solutions in terms of how to manage that data
Yeah.
and ultimately how to surface that. And here's the issue at the end of the day, because they're in so many different solutions, how do you surface that in a way that's manageable
Yeah.
for our project staff and our owners and project teams?
I would imagine archiving the project data must be a struggle as well.
Yes, it's an alarming thing that my CIO and I talk about a lot, right? Because we do have to archive this, and these are large data sets, especially if you're scanning. I mean, you're talking terabytes,
Yeah.
right? And so within that, every job having to archive that data, and then within that, having to archive it long enough that's going to meet our requirements not only for our owners, but then I think with things that could happen in the future, we got to make sure we have a way to get back to that data and do our analysis at that point as well.
Yeah. And I would imagine, I know, so actually, just dawned on me. Let's back up for a second.
Yeah.
You tell the audience a little bit more about Hensel Phelps.
Oh,
I'm making the assumption I know who Hensel Phelps is, but not necessarily.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
So Hensel Phelps, we're an employee-owned company, started in 1937 in Greeley, Colorado. Today we have, you can call them almost 10 regions, right? So anything from our Mid-Atlantic division, which is in Virginia, all the way through Oahu, right? Which, depending on the region, we focus on different types of work. So, some of our more iconic jobs, we did the Pentagon renovation. We were there for 10 years. That was our Mid-Atlantic division. Down in the Southeast, we do a ton of, work for, entertainment and also for, aerospace and engineering as well. And a lot of critical mission work, a lot of hospitality, healthcare, and we are the largest aviation contractor out there. So if you fly, at some point you flew through a Hensel Phelps project.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I remember correctly talking to Jeremy that the Denver airport, were you guys using Spot at Boston Dynamics?
And that was at our SFO airport.
SFO.
Yeah, T1 renovation.
That's
So it was a great partnership with Trimble and Spot and David Burke and that team, and it was a really good pilot program.
Yeah. So for the listeners out there, the Boston Dynamics Spot dog, robot dog.
Yeah.
So what was the use case that you guys did with Spot?
Great question. I think today it's real that we're having to do more with less, right?
Yeah.
So the ability for a autonomous robotic like Spot to go and every night wake up at 6 p.m. when everyone's gone and scans all night with whatever payload, right? Whether it's the LiDAR unit from Trimble or it's, a 360 capture. And then within that night, capturing all the data that we need, right? Integrating that with schedule and just giving our people, reports really on progress, especially when you integrate it with schedule. But then really, I think to alleviate the need for, 3 people to be there all night to capture that information. Now you've got a robotic that can not only go on missions, but then recharge itself and then relaunch and go on another mission, right?
That's
so
awesome.
For us, I think there's the efficiency gain. I think the consistency of the data that's captured, right? And then within that, I think some work-life balance for people not having to work at night.
Heck yeah, right? So you're doing essentially progress measurement for schedule purposes. Has it gotten to the point where that actually gets then tied into pay application?
Absolutely could. I think we different phases of how we use that data. We compare that data that we capture to the BIM to figure out if it's installed and installed where it should be. Within that, we start to get
that's important.
That's right. We start to get percentages of install. When you take the data and compare it to the schedule. And then I think with pay apps, I think we have better backup to understand if we are submitting pay apps that is it completely 100% complete and are the materials all hung up, right? And so another way for us to back check on the job site.
That's awesome. So coming back to the 30 to 35 solutions on each project, but when you explained Hensel Phelps in terms of the various types of jobs and projects you work on, you mentioned the Pentagon, so that immediately is a federal project.
Yes.
So I know this is one of our favorite topics, which is FedRAMP.
Yeah.
So unless I'm out of date, there's not a FedRAMP-approved general contractor management solution. So, and really, I don't know how many of those 30 to 35 solutions. So how do you manage? I guess maybe first is if you could provide a synopsis of what FedRAMP is to the audience, and then how do you navigate that within your solutions?
So whether it's federal or even some private owners that we have, there's a lot of IP. And sometimes IP is very restrictive, right? And so I think what FedRAMP does for the government is just assure that the data that we are capturing, processing, managing is being protected the way it needs to be. So I think that's the FedRAMP compliance, not getting into the weeds of the details of it, right? But I think today how we manage that, and not every one of our jobs has the luxury of picking all those solutions. It's really sometimes like a job like that, we're limited in solutions, right? It's the opposite, where you can't even take a photo on site, right? Every photo has to be regulated, reviewed. Within that collaboration that comes to a grinding halt just because it's very rare that you can put anything in the cloud, right? That's viable. So again, it's its own hurdles that it creates. Sometimes, it's like trying to find that balance. But I think with any owner, working with them, sitting with them early in the process, explaining to them what you're using, the value behind why you're using it. There's a lot of common ground that you can get. I think a lot of times we've been successful with having SOC 2 with attestation, right, outside of FedRAMP. So I think it's a evolving thing that we're keeping our eye on, and really partnering with groups like Trimble to find out what that sweet spot is so we can all be compliant.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm always curious as to, this is my own personal opinion, right?
Sure.
Is that FedRAMP was conceived, I think it was back in the Obama administration. And it was obviously like, hey, we have a data security issue here. So they developed this program, and it's been, implemented, over the course of however many years now. But I believe what's happened is that there's also been an evolution of maturity within the software industry. So we're not just talking about construction software. We're talking about any piece of cloud software that a federal agency utilizes has to meet this type of compliance. But I know from our perspective, eBuilder is FedRAMP authorized. But all of the security requirements that we had to create in eBuilder, FedRAMP version, we did them all in our commercial version too. Sure. So it's like, rising tide raises all boats, so to speak. And the other side of it is that, hey, software companies are going to fix this because that's the business.
They have to.
If our stuff gets stolen, people aren't going to utilize it. So I'm just curious in terms of is it are you hearing the same thing on the state ramp side of things? Are you familiar with that? And is it an overreaction, or do you think it's appropriate?
It depends on who you talk to and who's behind it, getting to that point. But I think it's something that needs to be focused on. I think that the polarities of what you're referencing there, it's, you need to be that far, or can you find some common ground? And I think that's a lot of it. I think, a lot of times the reaction is so over the edge, right? Because there's not a lot that's known about it. But I think to your point, as we evolve, as technology gets better, what we didn't know, now we do. And so I think it's not going to be as stringent, right? Just as long as I think the basic fundamentals are getting adhered to from when it comes to a security standpoint, right?
I'm a little fearful for the startup software.
Oh, yeah.
They can't afford
the
amount of rigor that goes into getting that authorization.
That's right.
It's not realistic for those, and that's not good for the innovation in our industry.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not a betting man, but I would hope to, at some point, again, those strict requirements are kind of back down a little bit. It becomes a little bit more common sense and some best practice and some common ground that allows everyone to kind of operate the way they need to, and allows the startups to be successful. Because to your point, they're not going to be able to get FedRAMP compliant if it maintains the strict rigor that it is today, right? Or it's very hard to.
Speaking of innovation, here's my segue going into Diverge, the corporate venture capital side in terms of. So, tell me about that. Like, where did it come from? Why?
Yeah.
And then what's you guys doing?
I think naturally, VDC has always kind of been on the front end of enabling our projects and our districts and our people with technology. Mm-hmm. And so for the last 10 years, we've had a great run at working with startups and really partnering with them, really exposing them to our people, our process, our owners, and our projects. And it's really been a very symbiotic relationship.
Yeah.
And so it's been very natural, I think, as we evolved that today we need a focus on technology, right? Someone that can keep their eye on the ball, right? Because it's moving so fast. And so really behind that too, we're trying to put strategy in terms of how we as Hensel Phelps consume technology, right? There's got to be some strategy behind it, some sustainability, and someone that's going to look more than beyond just what it's going to deliver on that project.
Yeah.
How is it going to live in that next project in 5 years, 10 years, right? Are they strong financially? What's their runway like? All these things that we typically have not looked at in the past, that today that we have to look from every angle to understand, is it not only a good solution, but is it sustainable and scalable, right? And so, and some of that sustainability and scalability is the requirements of security, right? Because that's part of the outlook today. But that's really it. I think for us, it's also, I think, doing better for our people. I think there's so many opportunities within construction today and in the industry in general to improve in all things. And I think working with startups, right, nurturing them, mentoring them, it becomes then just another way to make the environment better for our people as well.
So in terms of the venture side,
Yeah.
is it purely just investment in, or are you guys doing incubation as well?
We are. I mean, we've been incubating for the last decade, plus. I think there's so many jobs. We don't have an R&D department. Honestly, our incubator is our projects. They're live.
Okay.
Our people are real, right? So it's not, I wish I could put in some contained environment, but it isn't. But that's why we have to be very strategic in terms of who we partner with.
Yeah.
Within that, we're going to enable our people, that we're going to expose them to our people. And so we want to make sure that there's that relationship there. We're not going to put a Ferrari on a job site that requires, a 45, or less, right? It's just, you got to make sure that whatever tool we put in that job site is going to facilitate the needs, and it's going to be, I think, very accurate in terms of what we need. I think too often you can look at technologies that is so fancy but has no relevance to what the deliverable is on that job site.
Yeah.
And so there is that fine line of picking that right solution, finding the right resources to get behind that solution, right? And then making sure that partnership's there for feedback and improvement.
Yeah. So when you are looking at your venture funds that you have available, are you focusing on particular themes? Is there a prioritization of things that you're looking at that like would obviously it's going to have an immediate impact for you guys? So like what is like priority number one to fix?
That's a good question. I think there's different levels of innovation. I think at the job site level, a lot of times it's reactionary as to what that need is for that job for the next 3 years, the duration of that job. But more on the diverge side, we're looking at that North Star that's going to get us in the 5, 10, 15-year mark, right?
Yep.
What's going to continue to get us more jobs? What's going to bring risk down, right? What's going to make us more profitable? What's going to make us, deliver on schedule? Those are things that we're looking strategically in the next 10 to 15 years, and how to differentiate ourselves or just be sustainable in what we do. And what we do best is build, right?
Yep.
So that's the key. But I think all those other ones, it gets complex. But to your point earlier, use the technology changes all the time, right?
Yeah.
And here at Hensel Phelps, we just don't want to be disrupted, right? When those things do come in industry, we want to make sure that we understand what's coming and really position ourselves to really embrace that.
That's a really interesting side of it, right? Because it's like there's a side of the investment, so you can properly upscale and prepare your people.
That's right.
To actually do it.
That's right. Like robotics, at some point it will change, what we do in construction on a day-to-day. So we have to get smarter on that, right? AI, machine learning, additive manufacturing. How is that going to change the construction industry? We do a self-performance when it comes to concrete.
Yep.
And so within that, how is the additives going to change? Is the mix is going to change? All these different things that we have to be very mindful and thoughtful of as we start to strategize for the next 10, 15 years.
Awesome. All right, so final question.
Yeah.
I gave you a warning.
Yeah.
Motto. What's your motto?
Yeah, and for those that know me, it's definitely work hard, play hard.
Work hard, play hard.
Yes, you got to find balance, and I love what I do at work, but I think there's got to be things outside that obviously keeps you kind of balanced, right? So that's really
well. I think you gave an example that was it right prior to this trip.
Yeah.
Where did you meet your buddies? And what'd you do?
So we do an event every year called the AA events, and it's Lee Keen. He has a project out there where he takes portions that are built in the 1980s, and then he retrofits them and makes them off-road capable. And so for 3 days, we were out in Asheville and that area in North Carolina. Beautiful, by the way. And,
Yeah.
we drove them off-road like you would a Jeep, which is pretty phenomenal.
That's fun.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, excellent. Thank you, Ty. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing this
pleasure.
information.
Yeah, Matt, thank you.
Excited to continue to see the relationship with Hensel Phelps and Trimble, but also the different things that we may partner on in terms of investments and whatnot. So thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. And everybody, thank you so much for tuning in, listening, watching. I don't think tuning in is a thing anymore, but that's whatever.
Streaming.
Yeah, streaming. And until next time, stay connected.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Connected Construction Show. For more information, visit us at connectedconstructionshow.com.